The chamber turned heavy with silence as Nina's words echoed through the walls. The king, visibly shaken and pale from the revelations, slumped into his seat like a man bearing the weight of 1,000 storms. For a long while, he said nothing. His eyes lingered on Kelechi, then moved to Nina, his gaze softening, glistening with tears yet to fall. Suddenly, his tone changed, rising like thunder just before the rain. "Guards!" he commanded with a firmness that cracked through the room. Instantly, armed palace guards marched in, their boots thudding against the marble floor. "Go now. Bring to this palace every man, woman, child, and servant bound to the house of Chief Ogbonna. Leave no house unchecked, no path unexplored. Drag them here in chains if you must." The guards saluted and departed with speed. Moments later, they returned, their faces grim, breath short. "My lord," the lead guard said, falling to one knee, "Chief Ogbonna and every member of his household have fled. It seems they vanished into thin air. They must have planned this escape in advance." A tense hush followed. The king's eyes darkened. His fingers curled into fists on the armrests of his throne. "So be it," he growled. "Then let it be known across the kingdom, all assets, estates, lands, farms, markets, businesses, and bank holdings tied to Chief Ogbonna and his treacherous clan are hereby confiscated in the name of the throne." He rose to his feet with fire in his eyes. "And as for his friends, allies, and conspirators, let them be arrested immediately and thrown into the dungeons beneath this palace. They shall remain there until Ogbonna and his bastard son Odion are found and brought back in chains to face the wrath of justice." At that, the advisors exchanged glances, impressed by the king's decisiveness. The queen, still visibly shaken but slowly regaining her regal composure, placed a hand on her husband's shoulder. "Let this be the dawn of the new Abakar." The drums outside began to roll. The people would soon hear that justice had begun. In the stillness that followed the king's decree against Chief Ogbonna, he turned slowly toward Nina. The fires of justice still flickered in his eyes, but now they softened with a deeper question. "Nina," he began, his voice hoarse, worn by emotion, "you have risked everything for my daughter, for me, for this kingdom. You have walked paths many feared to tread. Speak now. What do you desire? What reward can this throne offer a heart so loyal and a spirit so bold?" Nina knelt again, but not as a servant, this time with the quiet nobility of a warrior laying her sword at the feet of the king. "My lord," she said, lifting her eyes with calm confidence, "if you wish to reward me, then undo what your ancestors have done to the blood of Bakar. Undo centuries of erasure. The Bakar name, its people, its blood, has suffered, exiled, dishonored, forgotten. Let justice roll down like waters. Let truth find its place again in this palace. Restore the name of Bakar to where it truly belongs." The king's face tightened, stunned into silence. "As for me, my lord," Nina continued, her voice now gentler, "let me remain at the side of the princess, not as a maid alone, but as her friend, her shadow, not only for her sake or for mine, but so that the spirit of Bakar may continue to watch over the soul of Abakar." A pause hung in the air, until Nina rose slowly to her feet and spoke again, her voice now like a blade cutting through centuries of silence. "My lord, there is something else. Something your throne was never told. Kelechi's mother. She is the true heir to this throne. She is Bakar's direct descendant, his granddaughter. She is your elder by lineage, your superior by blood." The room collapsed into chaos. The advisors gasped in unison. The queen shrieked and covered her mouth, her knees buckling. Princess Adanna stepped backward in shock and crumbled to her knees, tears welling in her eyes. Even Kelechi staggered, unable to form words, staring at Nina as though she had become something divine and terrifying all at once. The guards, strong men trained never to flinch, fell flat on their faces, heads down, confused and afraid. And the king erupted. "No!" He roared like a wounded lion, rising to his feet, shaking uncontrollably. "That is a lie. A poisonous, venomous lie. Nina, you are a devil. You're not real. I will kill you. I will behead you. You are madness wrapped in skin." He lunged forward, veins bulging on his neck, saliva foaming on his lips. But Nina did not flinch. Yes, your majesty, she said calmly, her eyes locked on his. I am a liar. I am a traitor. I am unworthy. I deserve to die. To be beheaded. To be burned. That is the fate of truth in this kingdom, isn't it? That is the inheritance of Bakar's children. Your fathers murdered their allies and crowned their betrayers. So kill me now, that old lies may flourish. Kill me so the darkness can remain in this throne room. Her words rang through the chamber like thunder, shaking its very foundation. But still, Nina stood tall. Still, the room remained frozen. And finally, the king, panting like a hunted beast, slowly collapsed into his throne. His rage gave way to confusion, then to despair. Bring her to me, he whispered, barely audible. Then louder, firmer, his voice cold and commanding. Bring Kalechi's mother to me. In chains. The room trembled. History was being rewritten. And no one would leave that chamber the same. As if driven by the winds of destiny itself, the guards flew across the courtyards and returned in moments, dragging a woman behind them, Kalechi's mother. Heavy chains clanked against her wrists and hung from her neck like iron necklaces of accusation. Yet she was not broken. She walked with quiet strength, her eyes neither cast down nor puffed with tears. She was still. Silent. Unmoved by the sea of commotion around her. The king didn't even wait for her to reach the royal floor before his fury exploded again. You, yes you, he barked, standing from his throne and pointing a trembling finger at her. Who are you and whose house do you come from? What is your name? Are you Ebel, the ostrich of legend? Are you truly related to this throne? Open your mouth. Speak, woman, or I'll have your head displayed at the market square before the sun sets today. But Ebel said nothing. She looked at him, not with fear but with disdain. With the silent strength of generations wronged. Her gaze was sharp, cutting through the king's robes and crown to the hollowness beneath. Her silence was deafening. The king boiled in rage. Take her, he screamed to the guards. Take her, and that lying sister of hers. Lock them both in the dungeon. Let them rot beneath this palace they so desperately want to rule. The guards rushed to obey. But just as they reached the doorway, a figure blocked their path. It was Princess Adanna. Tears streaked down her cheeks, but her eyes were dry, firm, resolved. Her voice, when it came, shook the rafters. Stop. The guards froze. You will not take them without me, she declared. Take me with them. Lock me in the dungeon too. I am ready to go down to the grave with them and be free from this madness, than to live as an ingrate princess in a kingdom built on lies, betrayal, and blood. She turned to face her father. I, Adanna, renounce my title. I am no longer princess of this land. The chamber gasped. But before the echo of her words could settle, another voice rose, quieter, but just as powerful. I too, said the queen, rising shakily to her feet. I, Oluchi, daughter of men and mother of truth, hereby renounce my title as queen of this kingdom. Her voice cracked. I cannot continue to wear this crown while darkness reigns beneath it. Let truth be my witness, I am no longer queen of Abakar. The king stood, speechless. His throne room, once the center of control and certainty, had become a court of reckoning. And in that moment, history trembled. The whispers had galloped ahead of the storm. Before the king's fury could finish its course, the news of the unfolding palace drama had flown through the corridors like wild wind. One by one, the palace chiefs and ministers, men of age, rank, and counsel, rushed to the royal hall, their flowing agbadas brushing the dust of haste and dread. Their hearts pounded with trepidation. They feared not just the king's wrath, but the unraveling of a kingdom's soul. As they entered, the scene struck them dumb. There stood the queen, no longer on her throne but beside the chained woman. The princess too, no longer robed in entitlement, clung tightly to the same woman, side by side with Nina, her loyal maid. The three of them, arms wrapped protectively around the one in chains. The air was heavy. The king's face was set like iron. Then the truth dropped like thunder. She is my in-law, the king declared to the chiefs. And she is Ebel. Gasps echoed through the palace walls. Mouths parted but words stumbled. When their eyes found the woman, her stillness only added to the mystery. She neither wept nor bowed. She simply was. The chiefs turned to their king with trembling hearts, speaking almost as one, "Your Majesty, please, tender justice with mercy. Do not, in rage, cast away the baby with the birthwater. Let us not destroy what cannot be rebuilt." The king, eyes glinting with restrained anger, took a slow step forward. Then, with mock calm, he asked, "Can any of you wise men standing here tell me truthfully if this woman is the real ostrich? Is she Ebel, the only ostrich of our land?" A silence. Then a chorus of unsure voices. "Your Majesty, it cannot be. The grave of the ostrich still stands, strong and beautiful, in the palace garden. She cannot be." The king laughed. Not with joy, but with a bitter sting. He slowly raised his right hand and pointed straight at the woman in chains. "There is your resurrected ostrich." Silence dropped again, heavier this time. The chiefs, stunned and shaken, began to cry out, all except one, the eldest, most revered among them, his beard as white as cotton, his voice as aged as the land. "Let us not be quick to wield the sword," he said gently, stepping forward. "Your Majesty, I beg you as a son of the soil, as a custodian of truth. Let her speak. Let her tell her story. Let the kingdom hear it. And if it is a lie, then let the rod of judgment descend with speed. But if she speaks truth—" He looked around the hall, his eyes glistening. "Then let history bow in shame, and let the throne rise again in honor." The palace waited. The air trembled. And the woman in chains slowly lifted her head. The great hall of the palace trembled with silence. All eyes were on the chained woman. Calm, unbending, her presence regal despite the iron on her limbs. She turned her eyes slowly toward the king, her voice soft yet cutting through the air like a blade through silk. "Adia. Adia. Adia." Olyamide, she called him, the ancient pet name only one person in the world had ever used on the king. A name the boy Olyamide only answered to when his heart was heavy and his tears needed calming. The court gasped. "Can the giraffe bow?" she asked, her voice trembling with unspoken weight. And as if drawn by a forgotten memory, the king answered reflexively, "Never to the antelope." The woman took a gentle step forward. "Olyamide, show me your palm." Without a word, the king stepped down from the throne. His feet were slow, reverent, his expression stripped of royalty and crowned only with memory. He opened his palm and said, "My fist is clenched." The next moment felt like time itself broke open. With a cry choked in emotion, King Olyamide fell into her embrace, trembling like a boy who had just found his mother after thinking her dead. "So, you did not die," he whispered, his voice broken. "How come?" "I'll tell you," she said gently, "if you remove these chains." At once, the king turned to his guards. "Take them off, immediately." As the iron shackles dropped to the floor, echoing like thunder, he raised his hand. "Bring her a royal stool. And I decree, let every man and woman here rise and salute. This is no stranger. She is Ebel, the ostrich, the rightful regent of Abakar." The entire court rose as one, their heads bowed, their voices hushed. And as Ebel, now seated in quiet majesty, looked around the hall, her gaze rested on the king once more. It was her turn now. And so, she began to ask her questions. As the silence in the hall thickened, Ebel sat with a calm that disarmed even the boldest hearts in the room. Her eyes, ageless and fierce, slowly scanned the gathering. Then she turned to the king, her brother, and spoke with the authority only the true ostrich could wield. "My king, if truly I have returned from the grave as they say, then let this moment mark the rebirth of truth and justice in Abakar. But first I ask, no, I command, you to dismiss this gathering." King Olyamide nodded, his expression unreadable. Then he lifted his voice, "Let every man return to his quarters. Guards, chiefs, advisors, leave us." There was hesitation, confusion, but none dared defy the king. In moments, the grand hall emptied, leaving only a chosen few. The queen sat frozen, her hands trembling slightly. Adanna, the princess, remained beside Nina, her eyes locked on the woman in chains who had now claimed a throne of silence. Chief Agbor, the wise elder, stood still with his staff pressed lightly to the ground. And finally, Kelechi stepped forward, unsure whether to kneel or stand. Now alone with her chosen audience, Ebel, once the forgotten sister, once buried in palace myths, inhaled deeply. She began to speak. Her voice held both storm and sorrow, flame and wisdom. Olyamide. You were just a boy when they told you I was dead. You wept at my false grave, but you never asked why there was no body. You never asked why your mother never spoke my name again. They fed you lies from golden spoons, and you swallowed them because they tasted like power. Her eyes fell on the queen. And you, my sister, walked into a kingdom broken and ruled over ruins dressed in silk. You were taught to fear me even in death. But I am no ghost. I lived. In the wild. In the shadows. And I watched my brother rule a kingdom built on betrayal. She turned to Kelechi. Her eyes softened. You, my son, are the seed of this throne. Not by choice, but by birth. Your blood carries the truth. And the truth can no longer be buried. Then, facing Chief Agbor, she said, You were there, Agbor. When they plotted. When they forged my death. And yet you held your tongue. Chief Agbor bowed his head, pain etched into the corners of his old eyes. Ebel finally rose to her feet. Her presence now was not just that of a sister or mother, but that of the storm the kingdom never saw coming. And now, Olyamide, I will tell you everything. But know this, after tonight, Abakar will never be the same again. Ebel stood slowly from her stool, her voice now carrying the weight of generations and injustice long buried. You want proof, Olyamide? She began, her eyes locked onto the king's. Then listen, and let all your assumptions bleed to death. She turned to Chief Agbor and pointed a steady finger. You were there, Chief. You and 4 others, Ogbonna's father, his uncle, and the then high priest of the land. You all signed and sealed the deception that handed this throne to a bastard. The king's face tightened, but he said nothing. Olyamide, you were not born of royal seed. You were brought into this palace wrapped in silk, yes, but you were not born in the royal bedchamber. Your mother, bless her soul, was too broken to speak the truth. But I will speak it. She turned again to Chief Agbor. Shall I go on, Chief? Or will you finally open your mouth? Chief Agbor lowered his head, his old hands trembling. You were placed on this throne, Olyamide, by the scheming hand of Ogbonna's father, the man who feared the prophecy that a woman, an ostrich, would reign in Abakar and restore justice. He feared me. He feared what I represented. So he made sure I disappeared, and in my place installed a puppet, a boy whose loyalty would forever be confused by lies and forged bloodlines. She turned now directly to the king, eyes ablaze. You are not the son of the king. Your real father was one of Ogbonna's cousins, a man whose name has been erased from palace records. And your mother? She was brought in as a maiden, already heavy with child. Gasps broke from the queen and Adanna, who covered her mouth in shock. The royal midwife, Mawiya, knew. But she died under mysterious circumstances a moon after your naming ceremony. Ask yourself, Olyamide, why did no royal ever question your uncanny resemblance to the Ogbonna clan? The king stumbled back a step, clutching the edge of his throne, his face pale. But the plan worked, Ebel continued, her voice rising. You were raised like a prince. Schooled like one. Crowned like one. But the throne of Abakar was stolen. Not from you, Olyamide, but from me. A long silence held the room, heavy and suffocating. Then, Ebel delivered the final blow. By the laws of Abakar, only a true heir, born of the royal womb and witnessed by the Keeper of Scrolls, may sit on the throne. And I, Ebel, born in this palace, witnessed by the Scrollkeeper herself, am the last living rightful heir. She looked around the hall, her voice low and steady now. So yes, I died. In your stories. In your history. In your conscience. But the truth didn't. And now, it stands before you. She sat back down, her chin high, her hands calm, as silence thundered through the palace walls. Ebel rose once again, her voice like a quiet wind sweeping through the chamber, firm and steady. My king, she began, you ask why I now claim the right to the throne? I do not claim what already belongs to me. I am Ebel, the ostrich. I was born on the royal mat, under the full moon, an heir prophesied and protected by the gods of Abakar. It was never a question of right, but of time. She took a step forward, her eyes never leaving Olyamide's. And fate brought you into our father's house. It wasn't by mistake. You were placed there so that the kingdom would not descend into chaos. You were brought in, raised like a prince, but you were always a son of circumstance, not lineage. And yet, fate was not cruel to you, Olyamide. It gave you life, a throne, and a chance at redemption. Her tone shifted, and she pointed toward Kelechi. Look at him, my son, your nephew. While you unknowingly plotted his death, he was the one saving your life, saving your daughter, and holding together the threads of this kingdom you nearly unraveled. She turned now to Adanna. And this daughter of yours, she is unlike you. The gods carved a different spirit into her. Her love for my son was not mere romance, it was divine intervention. It was the balm to years of betrayal, envy, and deceit. She turned to Nina, her voice softening. Nina, she is more than a maid. She is the light-bearer, the ambassador of truth, sent ahead to break the chain of lies that your fathers built with blood and silence. She faced the king again. You, Olyamide, you only did what you were told. You were an innocent child, initiated into things you never understood. Your hands carried out the commands of others, blind to the legacy you were entangled in. Ebel took a deep breath, her tone final. But fate has now revealed the full picture. Your daughter's love has healed old wounds. My son's sacrifice has restored balance. And I am here not to destroy you, but to help you see. She folded her arms quietly, and in the heavy silence that followed, the room seemed to hold its breath. Adanna, overwhelmed by emotion, turned away from her father's stunned expression and ran into Kelechi's arms. Her royal robes flowed behind her like a silken shadow, and as she clutched him tightly, tears streamed down her cheeks. Kelechi, she sobbed, her voice breaking, will you please save me again? Kelechi looked into her eyes, his hands steady as he gently wiped the tears from her face. His voice, low but full of strength, echoed through the quiet room. Adanna, he said, I will never leave you. No, never. At those words, a hush fell again. The queen stepped forward and bowed her head deeply toward Kelechi. Nina followed, kneeling before him with tears in her eyes. Then the old chief Agbor, wise and grey, lowered himself to one knee and gave a royal salute, a gesture that spoke volumes. All eyes now turned to the king. He stood motionless, his breath shallow, his gaze fixed on the boy, no, the man he once wanted dead. And in that stillness, they waited for the king's next move. The king slowly stepped forward, his robe trailing the marble floor, his crown slightly tilted, as though the weight of truth had finally begun to bend even his pride. He stood before Kelechi, his once prisoner, now revealed to be his savior, and more. There was silence. Then, the king dropped to one knee. The entire room gasped. His voice, when it came, was low and trembling, soaked in the kind of sorrow only truth could deliver. Kelechi, my son, though not by blood, yet by fate and by honor, my son still. I bow before you, not as king to subject, but as a broken man to the one whose back carried the future he never knew he bore. I wronged you. Deeply. Unforgivably. I judged you by your sandals, not knowing you were born of fire and forged by truth. He looked up at him, eyes glistening. I imprisoned you. Tortured your name. Cast you to the dogs of tradition. All because I was a slave. Yes, a slave to the lies of my father and the blindness of a throne that feared the truth. I did not see you, not as the one who saved my daughter, not as the one whose only crime was love, but as a threat to a system already poisoned by cowardice and greed. He stood now, turned slowly to face Nina, his voice thick with remorse. Nina, bright flame of the Bakar bloodline, bearer of light in dark chambers, the mouth that spoke when all other lips were sewn shut, I have wronged you too. I offered you chains disguised as duty, shackled you to tradition, and punished you for your loyalty. I called your truth rebellion, your honor arrogance. I denied you happiness, forced you to reject the man who died for love, just to satisfy the hollow echo of an outdated culture. His lips trembled as he paused, struggling to contain the tears building behind his words. I see now, and I repent. Before the gods, before the ancestors, before this throne and these witnesses, I apologize. Not with words alone, but with a vow, that every injustice you suffered in silence shall be repaid with public honor. And I, the so-called king, will be your voice, if you still find me worthy. The king slowly turned to Nina. His eyes, swollen from unshed tears, searched her face, the same face that had once bowed low before him, carrying burdens she never deserved, truths too heavy for her young shoulders. He stepped closer, until only truth could fit between them. His voice dropped, almost a whisper at first. Nina, what can a man say, when language fails to carry the weight of shame? He paused, lips trembling, before continuing. I made you kneel, when you were the pillar that held the roof of this kingdom. I silenced you, when you were the only voice still echoing with truth in a hall full of lies. I called you maid, when in truth, you were a guardian, a messenger, an angel sent from the womb of Bakar to stir our sleeping conscience. He bowed his head, then looked up again with moist eyes. I gave you pain when you deserved praise. I gave you fear, when I should have given you freedom. I pushed you to the corners of this palace, to the shadows, yet you carried our light. You carried my daughter's life like it was your own. You bore the secrets of this land, its rot, its wounds, and still you chose to save us, the very ones who had wounded you. He stepped back a little, breathing hard now, emotions thick in his throat. I watched you suffer, Nina. I let them humiliate you. I, Olyamide, king of Abakar, let the greatest truth-bearer of our time be dressed in rags, when she should have been robed in honor. And yet you stood. You stood when our laws fell. You stood when our traditions lied. You stood, when even I was too blind to see. He placed a hand on his chest. And so I say this, not as a king but as a man, I am sorry, Nina. For everything. For the love I denied you. For the peace I robbed you. For the silence I forced upon you. I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I pray the gods grant me the grace to right these wrongs, starting now. He knelt. Forgive me, Nina of Bakar. And if your heart permits it, help me rebuild this kingdom, on truth. And the palace stood still, as the spirit of Bakar wept through the silent air. The king rose slowly from his knees, his face still streaked with emotion. He turned to his queen, his companion through years of rule, the woman who had borne his name and title, yet had walked blindly beside him through veils of lies and illusions. He looked at her now, not as a monarch, but as a broken man rediscovering truth. His voice quivered with tenderness and regret. My queen, my Ijeoma, I have wronged you in ways no crown can justify. He stepped closer to her, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the room. I caged you in a palace built on falsehoods. I handed you a throne layered in illusion. I made you fight battles that weren't yours to fight. Turned you into a guardian of deception instead of a nurturer of truth. He inhaled deeply, his voice thick with sorrow. You have lived beside me in this kingdom of thorns, defending what we thought was honor, what we believed was loyalty. But what we were truly defending was a lie. He looked into her eyes, searching for the girl he had once married, the woman who had carried his burdens without knowing the roots of their pain. I turned your love into suspicion. I turned your grace into coldness. I fed your pride with crumbs of deception, never telling you that the very palace we walked in was stolen. A single tear escaped him as he stepped closer. And yet you stood. You stood with me when you should have questioned me. You fought for me when I didn't even know what I was fighting for. You bore the shame of things you didn't know, the weight of legacies that were never truly yours to carry. He bowed slightly, humbling himself before her. Ijeoma, I have failed you. Not as a king. As a husband. As a man. And I ask not for your forgiveness alone, but for your heart to walk with mine as we rebuild, not just this kingdom but our bond, our truth, and our family. He reached for her hand gently. Will you stand beside me, not as the queen they crowned, but as the queen I should have cherished better? The one who now knows the truth, and can help me guard it, not in fear, but in love. And the room held its breath, as truth and repentance wrapped the royal family in a grace the throne had long forgotten. The king slowly turned to Chief Agbor, the eldest of all his chiefs, the one whose words had carried weight like sacred scrolls, whose counsel had shaped many decisions that now stank of betrayal. The room went still. Even the air seemed to stop moving as the king took one heavy step forward, his eyes fixed on the aged chief. His voice thundered with restrained fury. Agbor, elder of elders, keeper of traditions, guardian of truth. How long have you stood beside me with lips dipped in honey and a heart buried in ashes? Chief Agbor's head slowly dropped, his wrinkled hands trembling slightly, but the king wasn't finished. You sat in meetings where the fate of this kingdom was determined, where destinies were destroyed, yet you said nothing. You watched me walk paths lit with the fire of lies, and you never once whispered the truth. He took another step forward, his voice now laced with hurt more than anger. You were like a father to me. I trusted you. Like my own blood. I clung to your words as if they were gospel. But you, Agbor, you who should have been the pillar, became the silent partner of my deceivers. Agbor dropped to his knees, the weight of his shame forcing him to the ground. He expected the worst. You could have saved this kingdom from years of darkness. You could have spared me from becoming the tool of wicked men. Yet you chose silence. The king's voice dropped to a painful hush. You didn't just betray your king. You betrayed a boy who once called you Baba in the royal court. Agbor began to weep softly, fully prepared for judgment. The hall braced itself for the king's command: beheading, exile, imprisonment. But then, the king exhaled deeply, his tone softening. And yet, he paused, his eyes misty. If this kingdom is to rise again, we must not only break the chains of deceit, but also mend the bridges that held us before they cracked. He walked up to the old chief and lifted him gently by the shoulders. Agbor, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because we need it. This kingdom needs healing, not another cycle of revenge. Agbor collapsed into the king's embrace, overwhelmed, weeping louder, whispering again and again. Thank you, my king. Thank you. I thought I was a dead man. And in that fragile moment of grace, the halls of Abakar felt the first wave of true restoration. The great hall was quiet now. Everyone stood still, the silence so thick it felt like a blanket of reverence had covered the palace walls. The king turned slowly and walked toward the woman on the royal stool, Ebel, the ostrich. He stared at her long and hard, his eyes blinking back the flood of emotions rising within him. He took a trembling breath and began. Ebel. Ebel the ostrich. That was the name I learnt to call you. You gave it to yourself, not for pride but to symbolize your strength, your grace, your sacrifice. You were never just my sister. You were my protector, my teacher, my only compass in the twisted corridors of the palace. His voice quivered. You played with me when others ignored me. You held me when the chill of loneliness became too heavy to bear. You taught me how to hear what no one else heard, how to understand palace proverbs, riddles and dark sayings, secret codes only you understood. You taught me how to smile when the eyes of traitors burned through my back. He paused, tears falling freely now. But you never told me I wasn't your equal. You never let me know I was not the rightful one. You never let the poison of envy touch your lips. Instead, you watched as they crowned me, and you bowed. You, the true heir. The king looked at the floor, shame blanketing his expression. His words dropped like stones in a sacred river. I thought I was born to rule. I thought the gods had chosen me. But now I see, I was chosen, yes, but by liars, by men with evil hearts and dead consciences. The same men who feared you, feared your strength, feared a woman with wisdom, a woman with the soul of a lioness and the spirit of truth. He turned to look at her again. And when they said you were dead, they told me you were buried at the palace garden. I mourned you. I wept in silence, my heart bleeding for the only soul who ever truly loved me in this place. But it was a lie. All of it. My life began to unravel the day you disappeared. I never found joy in the throne. It always felt cold. Empty. His knees buckled and he slowly sank to the ground, bowing his head. And now, fate. Fate has brought your second generation to save mine. Kalechi, your son. The boy I imprisoned, tortured, rejected. He saved my daughter. He gave me my future. How do I ever repay that? Chapter 3. The Debt I Cannot Repay. The king lifted his head and stood, his voice low but filled with fire. Ebel, I owe you a debt. One my crown cannot repay. One my kingdom cannot repay. One that even my lineage will never be able to repay. You left the throne so I could survive. You vanished so I could wear a crown you were born to carry. He looked around at everyone present. You are not just my sister. You are the salvation I never knew I needed. You are the light that was hidden so I could be spared, though unworthy. He walked to her slowly, then knelt at her feet. Forgive me. Not just for what I did, but for what I never knew. For what I never questioned. For believing the grave held you when all along, you were carrying the burden of keeping me alive. The hall was weeping. The queen sobbed quietly. Adanna clung to Kelechi. Even the guards behind the doors wiped their eyes. Then the king spoke his final words. You are the true ostrich. The one whose wings covered this kingdom while the traitors danced on your name. You are not just the regent. You are the mother of Abakar. And if justice be true, then today I give back to you what the lies took. May your voice rise again over this land. And may every child born henceforth know the name, Ebel, the ostrich who loved more than the crown, and lived to save us all. The Royal Decree of Abakar. Issued under the seal of the king's scepter. Let it be written and proclaimed this day, before the gods of our land, the ancestors of our fathers, the council of elders, and all the citizens of this mighty kingdom. This is now my command, and let the king's scepter seal it, as a perpetual ordinance in Abakar. From this day henceforth, by the authority vested in me as King Olyamide, first son of the royal bloodline and sovereign ruler of Abakar, the following declarations are made irrevocable. 1. Ebel the ostrich, my sister, my keeper, my teacher, shall henceforth be seated at my right hand upon the throne, not as subject but as the king's mother and highest royal adviser in all matters of the kingdom. Her wisdom shall guide the crown. Her words shall shape our laws. Her voice shall echo as mine. 2. Beside her shall sit my queen, rightful consort and mother of the kingdom. She shall remain a pillar of strength and grace, her counsel equal to the throne, her presence forever honored. 3. At the queen's side shall sit Kelechi, first son of Ebel, proven in loyalty, bravery, and royal blood, now declared heir apparent to the throne of Abakar. The scepter shall recognize him. The people shall salute him. The crown shall prepare for him. 4. By his side shall dwell my daughter Adanna, royal princess of Abakar, now declared his wife, friend, and eternal helpmeet. Their union is sacred, forged in fire, bound by fate. Together, they shall heal our past and lead us into a new dawn. 5. Nina, faithful servant, bearer of truth, warrior of light, from this moment, you are no longer a maid of the palace. You are appointed women's ambassador for all the women of Abakar. You shall sit with the queen in council, eat at the royal table, wear the robes of royalty, and partake in all state affairs. Subject only to Princess Adanna, your voice shall thunder on behalf of every woman. You shall build with us a kingdom where no truth dies in darkness. 6. Let all the royal scribes, heralds, governors, ministers, guards, and council chiefs be informed with immediate urgency and without delay of these sacred ordinances, that they may be carried out in full and without hindrance. 7. And finally, with immeasurable joy, I announce to all lands and peoples that in exactly 3 months from this day, the royal wedding of Prince Kelechi and Princess Adanna shall take place, with full honors and celebration. The gates shall be open, the bells shall ring, and the heavens shall rejoice. I, King Olyamide, give my daughter in joy to the most deserving son of this land. Let it be written. Let it be known. Let it be eternal. As the scepter has sealed it, so shall it stand, now and forevermore. As the king's scepter sealed the decree with a solemn gesture, a holy silence fell upon the royal hall. It was the kind of silence that marked the birth of a new era. The light from the high windows pierced the golden veils and danced upon the throne room, wrapping the moment in divine approval. The palace herald stepped forward, repeating the king's proclamation to every corner of the land, his voice trembling with reverence. Messengers were dispatched at once. The bells of Abakar tolled not in mourning, but in jubilation. The kingdom was not only spared, it had been reborn. At the king's right side, Ebel was carefully led to her new seat of power. For the first time since the days of her youth, the throne recognized her presence not as a phantom of the past but as its mother, its foundation. She sat tall, her eyes fixed on the king who once suckled wisdom at her knees. Her lips did not quiver. She only nodded with grace, her spirit drenched in the solemnity of destiny fulfilled. Beside her, the queen took her place, a humble smile playing on her lips. No longer only wife to the king, but now an equal force of counsel, standing shoulder to shoulder with the very woman whose identity had once been buried to secure her own husband's seat. Kelechi entered the hall flanked by royal guards, not as a prisoner or a mystery, but as the heir apparent. His mother's head was high, and his own was bowed only as a mark of humility. The people chanted his name outside the palace walls, their voices echoing off the marble like the anthem of an age finally healed. Then came Adanna. She moved like a breeze through fire, strong, soft, unstoppable. She walked to Kelechi and took his hand, and they stood before the kingdom not as lovers only, but as symbols, of unity, of healing, of justice restored. Nina stepped forward, dressed already in the robes the king had commanded for her. Gone was the apron of a maid. In its place, a garment of flowing blue and silver, etched with the new seal of Abakar's Women's Council. She bowed not out of servitude, but out of solidarity and strength. Her tears were not for pain, but for the burden she had carried so long being at last lifted. The king rose once more, his scepter raised. Let this ordinance never be undone. Let the earth and sky bear witness. Let history carry our names, not for treachery, but for truth. A mighty cheer broke forth. Thus began the preparations for the royal wedding. The streets of Abakar would soon be draped in crimson and gold. Songs would be written. Dancers would rehearse. Bells would be crafted to sing louder than ever before. And yet, even as joy settled like rain over the kingdom, somewhere far beyond the borders of Abakar, eyes were watching. Plots were stirring. And in the shadows, the name Ogbonna had not yet faded. But for now, Abakar breathed in peace.